Game one is in the books, and way to use your head, Abby Roque. We're going to talk about game one of the PWHL finals. Montreal taking game one over the Ottawa Charge in, of course, overtime. We also have a general manager for the new team in Detroit who will also host the expansion draft that we talked about. Some of the players that are on the list, over 200. And then we'll get you ready for the upcoming schedule. All that coming up on today's episode of At Even Strength. At Even Strength is our women's hockey podcast at Black Rosie Media from the ice of the PWHL, the NCAA, and international tournaments, grassroots development. We talk about it all, every level of the game with insight, analysis, and conversations that matter. My name is Erica L Ayala. I am here with my co-host Rachel Donner. And Rachel, I mean, my goodness. Of course we get overtime. Of course we get just like the wonkiest, but also just greatest goal. We had a Laura Stacey revenge comeback situation, and great goaltending. I mean, this is the PWHL.
Yeah, I think, getting an overtime game, of course, is, par for the course here. But I think that you also saw Montreal mount a pretty incredible comeback here. I know it was only like one goal down for a significant portion of time, but still, like, Ottawa is not going to make it easy. And that, they even talked post game about how like we played really good. Like we're very pleased with our game, the way they were able to match up against Montreal. And I think they're right. I think, again, you do have that crazy goal in overtime, right? And a very desperate Montreal scoring with 3 seconds left in regulation as well. With kind of the momentum of the game upended a little bit by that Laura Stacey temporary injury. But yeah, it was a great game for the most part. And I think really the kind of hockey we expected from these two teams.
Yeah, I mean, and also we got to see two of our favorite things, two braces. Rebecca Leslie. I mean, this was a great game. She was the scoring for Ottawa. And Abby Roque, the aforementioned, getting it done. Nicole Gosling, though, is the player who is able to sneak in a goal in regulation to even take it to OT. But I mean, Rebecca Leslie, we heard her teammates talk about her after the game. It was Jocelyn LaRocque on the dais or the podium there with her, and just saying, like, she's seeing a lot more confidence. She's seeing that she is being she's stepping up and able to take advantage of the opportunity she's been given. And Rebecca Leslie was asked then to, you heard LaRocque talk about you, and she basically agreed. She has the confidence of her teammates, her team, her coaches, and she wants to be able to step into that role. Now, Rebecca Leslie, no slouch of a player, though. Let's not get it twisted.
No, and I want to call out that first goal she scored in the game because, first off, like, just so patient, right? And that's something that you have to be patient when you're up against Anne-Renee Desbiens in net, right? You have to figure out your move. You have to get her to bite. And I think she was able to do that, right? And then get that initial shot, but the smarts to follow it up with the rebound opportunity. Like, that's what's so impressive to me about her game, is that she thinks and does at the same time so effectively.
Yeah, 100%. So she gets the first goal of the game that came in the second frame. So it was a scoreless first 20 minutes. Rebecca Leslie later in the second period at that. But then it's Abby Roque just a little over halfway in the third period, gets the first goal and for Montreal. So then we have a tie game until roughly the 16-minute mark when Leslie strikes again. And then, as we mentioned, Nicole Gosling in the waning seconds of overtime now, of regulation. Now, what happened again, we alluded to it, Rachel, but let's talk a little bit about Laura Stacey taking what looked like just a gnarly hit. Now, anytime you have a hit in the PWHL and it involves someone of the caliber of Laura Stacey, everyone's going to be talking about, was it a good hit? Was it what was going on? There was nothing other than the boarding that was called for that specific or excuse me, I'm sorry, that was boarding earlier on Sovalainen. So this was just a run of play, right? Situation.
Yeah.
And Stacey goes down. What did you see on the play? Do you think something should have come of it? I mean, again, a superstar Laura Stacey, everyone's going to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was borderline in terms of it being a call or not. I think there's an argument to be made, like letter of the law versus spirit of the law, because the way the run of play had been in the game, it was a very physical game and stuff like that was kind of happening all along. That being said, I really think the injury was caused by the nature of how Laura Stacey absorbed the hit. And I don't think it was like her fault. Let me make that clear. I just think the way the hit happened and the way she absorbed it made her lift her leg a little bit, and then it got kind of crunched in between, right? And so that's really what caused the injury. Now, it was very good she was able to come back in the game, right, and contribute to the overtime winner. And so, we'll see if there's any lasting effect here in terms of any lingering effects of this. But that being said, I just think it was like an unfortunate circumstance kind of incident.
Yeah, and it is extremely unfortunate. We don't like seeing these injuries. We do know that officiating has been under scrutiny throughout the PWHL season, this season, throughout the existence of the PWHL. So I think it's fair game to discuss it. But like you said,
Yeah.
Just a positioning of the body, which happens. You're moving fast,
Yeah.
you're reacting in real time, and you don't have as much space when you're not dictating perhaps your movement along the board, and got a little caught up. So of course, Laura Stacey did come back to the game, which was good. We actually heard from Abby Roque after that, and she basically was just saying, when someone like goes down, you want to be able to really get a win for them. And it was great to see her as they were warming up for OT to have Laura Stacey come back. And so that's a shot in the arm. I mean, we talked a little bit about Marie-Philippe Poulin in our midweek episode, and that's effectively what she tried to do for Hockey Canada and earlier on, right, for this Montreal team. Like, come back, just let your team settle in, have them not worry about you too much. So I hope I want to say it this way. I hope that her return means that it wasn't as gnarly as it looked. I mean, it couldn't have felt good. And I hope that this is not something that once the adrenaline wears off, right, Rachel, that, maybe it's something more serious. So we'll have to see. We'll keep an eye on that for sure. I also, I think you and I both alluded to this, but hey, Ottawa, they'll take that. Multiple times they were asked, about that they had a longer break or losing in the fashion that they did. And Carla McLeod, I think, does a really good job of taking those questions and just getting straight to the point. We lost the game. It's a 5-game series, and we're going to get ready for the next one.
Yeah, no, I absolutely loved, and it wasn't just her, it was like the players too. They're all just like, yeah, we played really well. We have to tweak a couple of things, but we still think we can win this series. We know we know we can win this series. And I think this game, despite the loss, gave them a lot more confidence than maybe they had going into it, which is always dangerous with Ottawa.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the game, pretty even when it came to shots on goal. 26 for Montreal, and 25 for Ottawa. Both goalies, able to make pretty significant saves. As we talked about on our last episode, we knew that was going to be the case. So, and I think you'll take it. If you really have to nitpick, it's like Abby Roque, she didn't get a stick on the puck. I think actually it Stacey that tipped that? Someone tipped it and then it went into um Abby's face. But but I think, you if you have to nitpick, it's like, okay, what are the things that we could have done traffic in front of the net to either get stick to stick so it's not as accurate of a redirect. But again, sometimes those things, I mean, a puck's gonna hit a stick when you're shooting on net, right?
Right.
And then for Abby, just to kind of knock her face, like, what can you do? What can you do, right? If you're
Right.
Ottawa.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that happens. And so,
Yeah.
like, again, how can they get mad about it?
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, the only thing I would say is that maybe, playing with a little bit more urgency in the
Mhm.
overtime, again, just because, they didn't get any shots in the overtime. Try and battle to win that face off, that extra face off, all of those
Yeah.
things. But that's like kind of the nitpicky, like
Exactly.
extra stuff that's what Carla McLeod was talking about.
Right. And that's what you do in a series, whether it's a tournament or a playoffs. You don't get too into the weeds. Your game is your game at this point. You anticipate what you can, you lean into the scout, and then you know that it is a grudge match. It's going to take a shot, a puck off the face, off the cage. It's going to take, the miraculous save to win a championship. Both of these teams are trying to do what no other team but Minnesota has ever
Right.
done in the PWHL. So we're excited, already off to a great start. How many overtimes are we going to get for game 2 is really the big question, Rachel. And we'll
I
talk.
know. It feels like just one of these games has to be like a marathon game for it to truly be a
Right,
PWHL series, right?
right. And I mean, I think Carla McLeod even said it, like, "Hey, welcome to the PWHL." Like, like, of course we were ready for this. Like, we did this last year. She didn't say that, but she could have. She didn't actually say that last part, but she absolutely could have. Like, did you see the box score from our championship or the championship series last year? Of course, it's going to go to OT, but we'll get into the upcoming schedule coming up. But listen, Rachel, we talked so much about expansion. I was a little worried that maybe we didn't need 2 shows for this week, because right before we were about to record, we hadn't heard anything about the 4th expansion team. It was a pretty straightforward game recap that we just did. And then, of course, at almost the exact time that we usually record this show, we get an email that Manon Rhéaume will be the general manager of PWHL Detroit. What?
I know. It's so exciting. I think it's a really cool hire. Again, because Manon Rhéaume is known primarily for being, a woman who played in the men's side of things, the first woman to play in a men's NHL, it was a preseason game and all of that. And she has this like history of being a trailblazer, which is phenomenal. She does have a history of being around hockey in Detroit in particular, dealing with the youth program there. But she's also, worked in and around the NHL, like working for the LA Kings,
Mhm.
and she's done player development. So, she does have a resume here, and it's so exciting just to have her in the women's game. And that's the
Yes.
that appeals to me about the hire.
Yeah, 100%. Like you said, she's been making rounds, cameos and things of that nature here and there when it comes to the women's game, but also just hockey overall at all levels. As you mentioned, youth hockey, men's hockey. This is huge. Rheaume is just, a phenomenal, like, she is just a joy to hear speak. She has such a passion and a love for the game, and she's rather soft spoken and almost a little shy, like an MPP type, a little. But it's so wild to me every time I hear her speak, because she's so revered, right? It's like, I'm sorry, do you know who you are? Because I know who you are. And while we haven't maybe seen her in an executive role in women's hockey, I do think that cachet, her name gravity that she is able to bring. I mean, you're gonna take a meeting with Manon Rhéaume, right? If
Yeah,
you're
no, of
if you're an
course.
agent or a free an agent trying to place one of your free agents, or if you're a hockey player that's a free agent, right? And so I think it's now just about how does she build out a staff to help execute that strategy.
Yeah, and that's my big question here.
Mm-hmm.
There is like a resume there. There is, some experience there, but like what's her plan for this team,
Mm-hmm.
right? How is she going to create a team identity here, right? And then, where does she think she fits in the echelon of women's hockey just because a lot of what she's done is in the men's game?
Right. Yeah, I think those are all valid things because listen, we're going to ask the question. We said it in our open, right? We're going to have the conversations that matter. And if we are critical of men who have hockey experience but no women's hockey, no elite level women's hockey experience, then you
Mhm.
have to ask the same question of women. And
Yeah.
Manon Rhéaume didn't play in any of the women's pro leagues, so the
To be fair, they weren't there for the most part,
right.
but
Well, that's right. Not
also
her fault. Not her fault. She was a
yeah,
pioneer
yeah,
before her time. Right. But my point is just that, the lived experience that some of the other GMs that we've seen or coaches, women coaches, it's different from Manon Rhéaume. And so that's why, just like with every other person, fair to ask the question, fair to ask how she builds a staff to support any yes, perhaps shortcomings, but again, to get to the end goal and result. So I'm very curious to see how that is going to go. Listen, I'm going to tease something. We are going to have Preston back on the show because listen, we mentioned I think in passing Carla McLeod will not return as head coach of Team Czechia, but it will be a coach that if you watch the PWHL, you might have heard of. Brian Nadolski is what we're hearing, going to be the new head coach of Team Czechia. I'm very eager to see how that's going to go. We are going to have Preston back on the program. We're going to get through the finals, though, before we have that conversation. So expect to have Preston back on the show to talk about that. But the reason I mentioned that, Rachel, is because with this announcement, and with more expansion, we've got 3 teams already announced. We're expecting a 4th at some point in time, probably right before the championship clinching game. Because why not? But jokes aside, I do wonder, do you think we'll see a shakeup in personnel, like coaching or even front office staff? Are people gonna kind of jump to these new expansion teams? Where are the personnel gonna come from?
yeah. I mean, that is part of the conversation when you have rapid expansion. I've talked about it primarily in the context of officiating, which,
Mm-hmm.
as we know, is its own drama. And, with not a clear path for a large enough, experienced enough officiating pool to draw from for the additional games, that's one part of it. But it's also from a management perspective. I think the personnel should be there, but I do have like some of the concerns that we've talked about with like men taking some of these jobs. And so I was very pleased to see a woman get the Detroit job for sure. But I think that, in terms of, filling all of these GM positions, all these coaching positions, these trainer positions, like all of this, there's a lot. And are there available, interested, experienced people? Maybe there are. And please surprise me, PWHL, with what we get. But, I think that there's been significant roadblocks to women getting these higher level positions,
Yep.
um, with men taking jobs in the women's leagues. And not saying they're not good coaches or good GMs or whatever, but there has to be opportunity for women. And there's been conversations, as you well know, in the WNBA about this very
Yep.
topic,
Yep.
and it will continue to happen.
Yep, you mentioned it. That's exactly where I was going to go with this. The WNBA has had these conversations. I wrote about this for, at the time, The Athletic, and it was a reckoning because we started seeing coaches like Muffet McGraw in the NCAA say, "I'm only hiring women because there is no pipeline for women coaches." And not only are men getting jobs in women's sports, in this case, Muffet McGraw was talking about basketball, but they also were overwhelmingly, for a long period of time, the most well paid. And so there we go. There's all of these other things. And shout out to Laysia Clarendon. This is another throwback or a nod to women's basketball. But Laysia Clarendon, who goes by, uses all pronouns, just in case you hear me interchange. I want to make that clear. And Laysia and I have talked about that. He has told me that is what we do. Anyway, Laysia, again, on The Athletic, was having a conversation in basketball and said something that I loved, and said that, people covering women's basketball almost need sociology degrees, because talking about hard-nosed sport in the absence of how sport is different for women, and then what Laysia was talking about, what they were talking about, is also over covering that over with also the intersection of race and gender, that it's one thing to say, we're just covering this is what happened, and you're almost always doing a disservice when that's the way you approach it. Now, the demographics for women's hockey are extremely different. It's not 80% Black women. There is a queer population, that we know, that of course we know. That being said, there's less of a, what do I want to say? I think for a long time, the push for equality and representation in women's hockey specifically, and then to broader hockey, has come from the outside, has come from fans. And I get the sense, Rachel, that hockey players themselves are less likely to assert themselves and their identities, especially when those identities are underrepresented in the sport. And why am I mentioning all of that? Because is this a league that is going to see what even the NWSL has done, what the WNBA has done, and make sure that there are clear pathways for women and other groups to be involved in women's hockey? Or are they going to kind of take the overall general hockey approach, which is, well, hockey is hockey? And I think it's interesting.
Which I don't think is, I mean, you can say that, but also, should you say that?
Right. And that's
like,
where I
shouldn't
think,
you aspire to more?
Yes, if hockey is the goal, woo, we got a lot of work to do. It is 2026, people. But again, if you haven't checked out that interview or that conversation, I just thought it was a really good conversation, because it is women in women's basketball that identify in very different ways having a conversation about how, yes, we get it. You want it to just be the game. And to do that is a massive disservice to the people who are playing in this specific league. And I do think that carries over to women's hockey. Now, whether women's hockey, or even more directly, the PWHL, is willing to acknowledge that and embrace that or not, it's the reality. And so that's why we have these conversations about, okay, Manon Rhéaume, love that as a pioneer, and what's the women's hockey experience? Because the lived women's hockey experience, and then being an executive in that space, even with a new league that's trying to do things very differently, you have to kind of know what's going on to be able to be of service to the athletes who are, if we want to put it in business terms, not that I'm comfortable calling people this, but they are the product, right?
Yep.
They are the reason that you have a business. And it's wild to me, but also not, because, the history of the world. But it's wild to me that a women's league in particular would not be a little bit more mindful of that. But that's where, again, how many men who are indoctrinated into a way of thinking that oftentimes has been absent of women's voices, even when talking about women. And even if they are well-to-do, well-meaning, well-to-do men, that doesn't mean that they have the insight that is required to do the job. So again, we're going to keep eyes on this. There's a lot that can be said. And again, we're going to talk about it here at Even Strength.
Yeah, and there's the pattern of men wanting to be a big fish in a smaller pond, and as this pond gets bigger, like, what are we doing here? We just have to ask. But again, Manon Rhéaume, love it.
Yes, we love it. We love it, and
just want to see what the plan is. That's all.
Yeah,
as we would
100%.
with any GM.
Yeah, again, fair game. Manon Rhéaume said, "I'm incredibly honored and excited to join the PWHL and help build something special in Detroit. This city has such deep hockey tradition, and the passion for hockey here is truly special. The growth of women's hockey has been incredible to watch, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to shape the future of the sport alongside the PWHL. I can't wait to get started and build a team that Detroit fans will be proud of. And once again, good luck to you, Manon Rhéaume, because I hope you know the rules for the draft. Again, we've had them reported. They have not officially, or I should say free agency, not just the draft, but free agency. And good luck in free agency, because we're still getting kind of piecemeal reports, but nothing official from the PWHL. But we do know it's already, as of the day we're recording, Rachel, it's May 15th. So we're roughly a month away from the entry draft. So we'll see how things go. But as we close out this show, our episode that will go up on Saturday, let's get everyone ready, Rachel, for the games as they come. So we had game 1. And game 2 will be at Place Belle on Saturday afternoon, 2 p.m. Eastern time. And it's on Ion, Rachel. So, I want to, before we talk kind of a little bit about what we expect to see in game 2, let's talk about what the Ion experience, what the Ion viewership experience was like.
Yeah, so I don't know what anybody else's experience was, and I watched a lot of it on delay. So I recorded it on Fubo. So for context, right? So I recorded it on Fubo, watched the Ion broadcast. Aspect ratio was off for the first 2/3 of the first period. They did fix it eventually. It was like the regular broadcast, like the same style, the same setup, the same kind of ad break stuff that they normally have. It was just on Ion, but there was definitely something wrong with the aspect ratio. So I don't know if that had something to do with the broadcast itself or if it was an Ion thing in particular, or a Fubo thing. Cannot speak to that. Did love to see Allison Lucan show up though on the broadcast. That was nice to see.
Yes, 100%. Well, hopefully that gets squared away. I mean, but it's great to see that. Hopefully this means that for those of us in the US that we will have some version of a national broadcast beyond just these one-offs or the playoffs, especially if it's looking like there's going to be more US cities in this more recent expansion than Canadian ones. All right, Rachel, on to the hockey again. We'll end on that note. Again, game 2. Now we already got one overtime. I do think it's going to be tight, right? We saw a tight game that Montreal was able to take the lead on. Do you have any bold predictions? We got 5 goals overall in game 1. Did take it to overtime. Do you think we get more goals than 5? Less goals? What are you taking? The over or the under on 5 goals?
I'm going to say under. I think this is a 2-1 game. And I think Ottawa wins this one 2-1.
Okay. So they take one on the road before again having the chance in game 3 to host at Canadian Tire Center. Now a few other people had noted on social media and in our Black Rosie Media Slack channel, attendance. We have to see. It looked like it was a little of a slow roll to get the crowd. What did you make of the crowd, especially knowing that at least a few hours several hours, I should say, before the game wasn't completely a sellout. Is that like, are we there where we're talking about like, oh my God, the PWHL had a game and it didn't sell out? What's wrong? The sky is falling.
I mean, the Habs played at the same time, so there's that.
Yeah.
And it was short notice in terms of the schedule. So
yeah,
that kind of is what it is, I think, for game one. But I think it'll change as the series progresses.
Yeah, I think so too. And Corey Chevry actually mentioned something about that. I mean, it's still a good, like you said, Habs playing, they're in the playoffs in the NHL. And they're going to have that again, I believe, for game two. And Corey Chevry said, you know, I guess there's like Jersey Day or something in the schools, local.
Mhm.
And she's like, you know, some people are wearing Victoire jerseys as well. But she's like, what we need to do is get like a split jersey so you can rep the Habs and the Montreal Victoire at the same time.
I say no. I am the only people, in my opinion, that are allowed to wear split jerseys are
Families.
parents.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if you've got two
I'm with
guys or two women or whatever playing in the game, you get to split your jersey. Nobody else does.
Nobody else. I will say I'm not as affronted. Like I would never go for a Yankees Mets split jersey. We don't do that. That being said, if it's the same city and it's because you want to rep the women's and men's team, I personally would just rep the women's team, but that's a me choice. So if you're gonna do it, I guess cool, go for it. But I am also not a seamstress. So if anyone has a jersey like that, let us know. Hop in the chat and let us know. Would you rock your PWHL team and a men's team in the same city on a jersey? Let us know in the chat. But hey, we're going to come back. We've got, again, game two, and we know we're going to at least get a game three, Rachel. I guess this is, before we get out of here, do you think we go the distance, or do you I'm not feeling a sweep.
No, this feels like a 4-game series to me.
4-game. Okay. I'm kind of feeling that as well. And then are you ready to say who you think takes the first Walter Cup for a Canadian team? Do you have an inkling yet?
Like, I mean, if you're going to make me choose, I'm going to say Montreal.
Okay. Montreal. I will be honest, from an analysis perspective, right now, I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. I think it's fair to say that y'all know I have been enamored with the Ottawa Charge since the beginning. It's a little much to call me a fan, but I appreciate their chaos and always am rooting for them to get a little continuity in their beautiful, beautiful chaos. But I am a big fan of Katarzyna Mrazova, who's still on the squad. Brianne Jenner, listen, if you're predicting a game 2 win for Ottawa, then we know the stats say that Jenner's got to score. She's like the Jonquel Jones of the Ottawa Charge. Jonquel Jones, she gets a double-double, the New York Liberty win basketball games. When Brianne Jenner scores, Ottawa wins. So there you go. So the best I can do as far as a prediction is or I'll say it this way, Ottawa Charge wins game 2 if Brianne Jenner scores. I know, super bold prediction. But hey, we're going to keep eyes on game 2 and game 3, and we will be back here on another midweek episode of At Even Strength, brought to you by Black Rosie Media. Enjoy the games, and we'll catch you soon.